When my mind is fucking cloudy, cloudy. Need to focus on somebody. Yeah, Master P, yeah, she bout it. She understand the assignment.
Hey, I've been on reckless abandon, ain't got shit to lose. I've been lost inside a dream, I probably hit the snooze. I didn't ease that label, still I gotta keep cool. Leaving text on red, make sure my pockets green and blue. Then I put green on their heads, I call them Beetlejuice. Seen them on the evening news, kill them when I needed room. You think she a tight, she begging me to beat it loose. She's in red like Pikachu, every time I Pikachu. Shoot her up, guess I'm sliding. Left a nigga home, well phone, it's on silent. Shorty match my fly, in the clouds, we residing. Then I took her home, made her sing like a siren. She came straight out in erotic novel. She riding, she swallow you out of a bottle. She just wanna see me whining and grovel. She fly like a model, she bow, I say bravo, baby.
When my mind is fucking cloudy, cloudy. Need to focus on somebody. Yeah. Master P, yeah, she bout it. She understand the assignment. I told her we don't gotta label it anything, but I think you know. If the sky above you was cloudy, then I would paint it blue. I know her ex-man tripping out like he ate the shrooms. I gave that man a memorial like from May to June. I get way too petty when I'm off the shit, so I hope these motherfuckers don't cross me again. The only L I see is in my love for revenge. Motherfucker, student loan debt and paying rent. I was on Santee Alley when the streaming check came in. Had to buy my baby Sapphire birthstone gems in the Prius bumping Thames. I told her when I pop I'm really buying her a Benz. I know love don't cost a thing, but I want to spoil you rotten like I left out some old food. R.I.P. the OB need a headstone, blocking everybody else out like noise canceling headphones. When my mind is fucking cloudy, cloudy. Need to focus on somebody. Yeah, Master P, yeah, she bout it. She understand the assignment. Yeah. Let's go, that bitch.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Advantage. I am your host, Michael Fiddle. Today is Saturday, August 31st. It is Labor Day weekend, but we don't give a fuck because the sports become prime time. And if you are a professional bettor, weekends, holidays, and every other time people are celebrating, we find ourselves working harder. So that is what we are going to do today. I'm going to be joined by professional poker player Drew Johnson to talk about the 5-game WNBA slate for Sunday, September 1st. Before we officially get started, let me remind you guys to please rate, review, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. If you are watching the live show on Twitter or YouTube right now, please go sign up for or subscribe to the Advantage Sports Betting YouTube channel because we are starting to do a lot more video content. And it's a lot easier to follow when we share the odds screens and you can watch along. You could also sign up for my completely free gambling newsletter, fiddlespicks.substack.com, and check out the website Recovery for Athletes, the sponsor of this podcast. They are the #1 online retailer for all of your home recovery equipment needs. You need a Theragun, some protein powder, some weights, go to recoveryforathletes.com. Use code THEADVANTAGE for a discount off your order. Saturday morning, and you DM me ready to go in the studio waiting for me before I'm even awake. Drew, do gamblers work harder on holidays?
Absolutely. This is where the money is made. In my poker career, I've made more money on weekends than any other time. Because
is that because
all
the
fish come out? Yeah,
there you go.
I go fishing on Sundays, and it's great.
You get some people come get their peach burned more than a long day at the beach when they're sitting at a table with Drew Johnson. Yeah, I find that to be very true. Like the social life of a gambler becomes difficult because all of my Sundays, as we now get to NFL, I don't do college, so hit me up on Saturdays, people. I'm down to hang out, and then you get to nights, holidays, Thanksgiving for football, NBA for Christmas. There's now NFL on Christmas now. I don't hang out with people on Christmas because I am working betting the NBA and most likely betting NBA unders because they are day games. And when we start that early, we go with unders, which is a great way to jump into this slate, Drew, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 WNBA games taking off Sunday. The first one actually doesn't start till 3 p.m. Eastern time. Chicago Sky versus Minnesota
You're missing
Lynx.
the Seattle, Connecticut. They're at 1:00 tomorrow, but we'll get to that in a second. Just because that's probably not available on FanDuel. It's only on Bet365, so you're not seeing it. Yeah.
Let's do that one first. Let's go in chronological order. I'll pull it up right now.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so the only thing that we have today, quickly, if people are watching live, is Sun versus Mystics. I took the Sun money line, minus 375, Drew. I saw the movement towards the under. I'm really liking this Suns team, the way that they've been playing recently. They did drop one, and I think this is going to be a little bit of a revenge spot. They added talent. Mystics clearly going the opposite direction. Mystics off of a lucky win, Sun off of a tough loss. I would expect bounce back in both direction. So give me the Sun money line. And I don't want anything. It literally, God damn it. I wish I had this right here because we literally just saw it move to 385 in front of my eyes on the screen. All right, I'm going to pull up that Bet 365 odds, and we are going to talk about the first game, which is the Seattle Storm facing the Connecticut Sun. So it is a back-to-back, Drew, for this Connecticut Sun team, playing 1:00 today, and then
3:00 today for me. Sorry,
I'm talking
and 1:00 tomorrow.
Pacific. So 4:00 Eastern today, and then 2:00 Eastern tomorrow. Is that correct?
3:00 Eastern today, 1:00 Eastern tomorrow. You're 1 hour off, but yes. So it's a 22-hour turnaround time, which is pretty insane considering they have to travel back to Connecticut. Now, I know it's not that far from Washington, but it is. That is one of the quicker turnaround times you'll ever see in the WNBA, and it may be the quickest I've seen all season.
Yeah, that's a super fast, and you don't really see back-to-backs in the W, and we don't really see them necessarily with travel spots associated with it, right? So even though the second game's a home game, you have to travel back to that home game. So I apologize for not understanding the time split between these games and getting a little bit confused in my time zones in what's showing up on my screen. I don't know what whenever I log out of these my accounts, Drew, it always doesn't, like, the server doesn't know what sports book I'm connecting to. Like sometimes it'll just send me to the Colorado sports book or the Arizona sports book out of nowhere. So sometimes it puts me at a different time zone when I just show up to the odds in an account that's not logged in, because if you click the link, you might get sent from someone in Colorado. It'll send you to the Colorado sports book, for example. Anyways, so let's talk about this game, the back-to-back. Are you playing an under already? A 153? Is that the direction that you would look for this game? Are you looking to back either of these teams? The Sun in the back-to-back, the Storm having a huge East Coast road trip coming from Seattle after losing to the Liberty last night. How would you evaluate this Sun versus Storm game?
Personally, because of the short turnaround time for the Sun, and because, they just played a tough game against Indiana a couple of days ago. Great game, by the way. If you didn't watch that one, you missed a gem. I took Seattle at plus 2.5. I think at the time it was minus 110. As you can see, it's now minus 115. So I have gained a few cents of CLV there already. We'll see what it opens up at. It's going to be interesting to see if that line moves after today's game. Like you said, the Mystics not playing too well lately, so I expect Connecticut to win, but if it's not a convincing win, you might see that line move even further towards Seattle.
With the Lynx losing recently and the Aces struggling recently, the Connecticut Sun do have a strong hold in that 2-3 window. They're not going to catch the Liberty, but they're probably not dropping into the 4-5 bracket. And we are reaching this back half of the season. Do you think that maybe the Connecticut Sun might rest some players on the second leg of the back-to-back, considering their playoff seeding is pretty comfortable? or do you think they're going to go for it because they really want to get that home court advantage in that 2, and they are battling with the Lynx for that 2-3 spot?
I think that they'll probably go for it. Seattle has been struggling lately. They did just get beat up by the Liberty. Although they did play fairly well, it was just the Liberty were the Liberty finally. They dropped a game. I can't remember who it was against off the top of my head.
Sparks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So they dropped a game to the worst team in the league. They came out a little flat last night to start. It was 8-0 or something like that, or 6-0, and then 11-3. And then they came on. They started shooting well. They started getting some open looks and really put the hurt on Seattle. I think Seattle will look to bounce back from that. And from what I saw from them, they played a good game. It was just the Liberty were the more talented team in that situation.
Yeah, that makes total sense. This is one that I probably wouldn't bet into really early. You said you grabbed a little bit of Storm. That's the direction that I would look, because the Sun, listen, they do have some older players. Like Bonner is 15 years in the league, and she's one of the top players for their Connecticut Sun. Alyssa Thomas, they just acquired Mabry, so they do need to kind of work her into the rotation. So more reps for her is going to be a good thing. But we'll see. I mean, maybe Bonner sits, Mabry starts, and then the line moves a little bit. But Storm have dropped 8 in a row against the spread. I know it was 7 in a row going into last night, and then they lose to the New York Liberty, who end up pulling away in the fourth quarter. So it's almost like you're picking up, if you're buying into the Storm right now and they're 0-8 against the spread in their last 8. Drew, I am not a trends better. Like, I think if people who would say, oh, you have to play the Sun because the Storm are 0-8, so it's going to continue, I think it's priced in. And I go the other way, saying you're probably picking up the Storm at the best available number when the market is lowest on them as they possibly could be.
Yeah, and if the Mystics put up a fight today against the Sun, you're going to see that line balloon out to, or sorry, not balloon out to, but drop to +1.5, +1, or maybe even a pick 'em.
Yeah, if Alyssa Thomas is out, like if she's one that sits, then the Storm might be favored on the road.
And as always, with the team playing the day prior, we haven't seen the game yet. The injury movement is going to be towards the Sun. If something happens that's bad, and obviously we don't want that for any player in any league, then that line will move towards the Storm, and the Storm aren't risking anything currently. So that's why I picked it up, and I'm sticking with it for now. We'll see how that line moves. I might play back.
You can even watch, if you're going to be watching that Sun versus Mystics game, like if it's tight late, you're in a good spot. If the Sun are blowing them out at halftime, it's like, oh, maybe I dump this ticket.
Yeah, like I'm going to
might rest players, and then there might be action coming in on the Sun. So you could evaluate. It's almost a look-ahead line, and we're going to get into a lot of that stuff when we start doing NFL in the next few weeks, which is, forgot to mention this, we are 2 days away from me announcing what the NFL content will look like here on The Advantage. So I think listeners, viewers should be very excited. There are some very fun things, and I think it's going to be super educational and strategic in breaking down NFL content. I think too many people are focused on who's got the best offensive line and quarterback, and it's Mahomes. I am going to be giving you detailed strategy to breaking down the NFL in terms of a gambling sense, not a football sense, because I don't really know the X's and O's and 11-man personnel and 12-man versus 22. I know the general concepts, but not the way that I could recognize it on a basketball floor. Anyways, let's keep talking about this. I'm really
looking forward to that, by the way.
Yeah, because you don't even know what's
casual.
coming.
I'm a casual NFL fan. I don't have a team, but I'm super looking forward to getting into that this year.
Let's preview this right now. Yesterday, I was on the phone with Spanky from Spank Odds, and Spank Odds and Spanky, they're the industry leader in an odds board and an odds screen. They have free services, premium services. Spanky is the guy who created the conference Bet Bash in Vegas, which just had their 4th annual conference, which is a huge meeting and networking gathering of the greatest minds in the sports betting space. It takes place at the Circuit Casino in Las Vegas, which is known for being the sharpest book. Me and Spanky were on the phone yesterday, talking about what project that I'm working on. So stay tuned because we got some good stuff coming down the Advantage pipeline. But let's talk about this this Chicago Sky versus Minnesota Lynx game, Drew. Finally, actually ready to talk about this because I skipped the order previously. But before we get into talking about the Sky versus the Lynx, I do want to quickly say that someone DM'd me, and his name on Twitter is Proplo. And I just want to say thank you to Proplo because this is the message that he sent to me. He said, "Hey, Fiddle, loving the WNBA episodes with you and Drew. Just something I noticed. You guys mentioned the Sky are and could be tanking, but they don't own their pick. It is a pick swap with Dallas, so they don't really have reason to tank. Thought I would mention it." And I just want to say, thank you to Proplo. One of my favorite expressions in life is correct an expert and he'll thank you. Correct an idiot and he will get mad at you. I did not know that the Chicago Sky owe another team their pick. I was seeing them trade Mabry away and dump talent for future assets. And I've noticed like Kennedy Carter is a little dinged up and she's missed the last 2 games and they have just no urgency to rush her back. So I don't think they have an urgency to win. I don't think they care about winning this season, but they are not in your typical NBA quote unquote basketball tank mode. And I have been talking to it like they would be wanting to improve their pick, which is not the case. So I just want to say thank you to Proplo. Correct an expert and he will thank you. Correct an idiot and he will get mad at you. That was a beautiful correction that we needed on this show, Drew.
Yeah, appreciate it. And the other thing is, with there being 3 rounds and only 12 teams, tanking for an earlier second and an earlier third round pick is still viable, I think, in this league. So our point isn't necessarily moot, but it is a good point that he made and pointed out to us. So appreciate that.
That is even something I didn't consider at all, but totally true. Like the college game is super deep right now.
Yeah.
That having an early second round pick, early third round pick, that's still having a lottery pick in the NBA if you have an early second round
exactly.
pick.
So,
interesting. Okay.
And the other thing is the
Food
record
for
with
thought.
Dallas is kind of similar, right? So you could be like, it's not going to matter much if they lose or if they win. Those picks might be back to back. So we'll see what happens. But thanks again.
Okay, so let's talk about this Sky versus Lynx game. Sky are 11.5-point underdogs. Total comes out at 158. I just want to make sure that that's where it opened because I think it did. Yes, that has opened there. There's 158.5, but they're minus 120 to the under. So that's not a better line to get a higher number towards an under. Drew, we typically associate Sky with under. We typically associate Lynx with under. Coming out at 158, that's a number that I kind of want to grab towards an under.
Yeah, I would think that's kind of sharp, but if there's going to be line movement, I think you're right. It's probably going down. So taking the 158 wouldn't be a bad option. We'll see how it shakes out. This line was only released about 90 minutes ago and it hasn't moved yet. So we'll see what happens as people come in on it. I also think you can't lay the 11.5, right? Like,
definitely not, especially if we're predicting an under.
Exactly, right? So if anything here, I would agree with you and just try to pick off where the line's going to move, but I think these are both sharp numbers.
Yeah, 800's too steep of a money line to play
Absolutely.
into if you like the Lynx, but you don't want to pay the spread. You're not paying minus 800 on a one-off money line between these two teams. You could take the plus 11.5 correlated with the under, but I don't think either of us like the Sky enough to bet into that. So it seems like
certainly not without Carter. Right.
Exactly.
And I would imagine that Carter being out is priced in currently if she comes back. So the interesting thing was the tweet that was released was she was held out of last game because of health protocols and not because of illness. So I'm concerned that the illness she had might have been COVID and that they're just holding her out like we used to do for the 2-week period. You know what I mean?
Maybe she's symptom free, but testing positive.
Exactly.
One of those situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's pure like that's just me speculating.
But it's an educated guess, and we also enter in the caveat that we just said we don't think the Sky have any urgency to rush people back. So maybe this is the game where she finally does come back because, hey, she hasn't been sick. It's just protocols. She's finally available. So I would wait on that news. But this is a spot and two teams playing where I like the under. And generally 160 is a key number for WNBA totals because that's just 4 points a minute. You get to that 40-minute game, 4 points a minute. You're scoring 160. So that's your typical pacing. And you're asking for just south of that, which I think is very reasonable with these two teams. The exact opposite end of the spectrum is Drew's Indiana Fever. I don't think there's any other way to say it than Drew Johnson's Indiana Fever against the Dallas Wings. Line opens at the total 179.5. Drew, I saw it in the middle of the night, 179.5, and I thought that's probably still going to go up.
Yep.
But the way that these totals are now being priced and moving, and the way that even the Fever are -4 on the road as an opening line, and probably even still going to take steam. I know we love the way the Fever are playing. I know they're playing with a blistering pace. This is a point where I'm like, it might have gone too far. I don't know if I'm playing the other side, but I'm just like, this is a total skip for me because you are going to get the fast-paced offense, especially with the Dallas Wings. You should see what the Dallas Wings defensive efficiency has been the last 15 games. That is more in the toilet than me after 2 coffees. And then the Fever are obviously playing so fast. So you are going to see enough opportunity to generate a 182.5 over 183, pushing that total high. But now you're asking, you need the efficiency to be there, right? Like no one can have an off night for asking each of these teams to score 91 points.
I 100% agree with you here. I grabbed the 179.5 at Bet365 when I saw that FanDuel had released it at 181.5 and it was still available. So I snapped that up and I'm looking to play back for sure.
Why don't I have a text telling me to do that?
Because I didn't think to do it. I was so focused. I'm focused on getting the lines, bud. I'm sorry.
That is a beautiful
absolutely
one.
keep that in mind next time.
Yeah,
and I didn't want to. I knew you were sleeping. I didn't want to wake you.
That is
a long
also
weekend.
very
Come on.
true. Me and Drew sometimes communicate via Twitter timelines because we know that each other are sleeping and we need to let you guys know when the content is happening. So we kind of publicly and privately communicate at the same time. So you have an over 179.5. Yes. Are you playing that back or would you just let it ride?
I'm absolutely playing that back. In fact, smart. If that gets to 183.5, even 184, and this number has been climbing.
Can I predict what you're about to say?
I'm going more on the under.
You're about to flip your position and go double the other direction. Let me explain to the people who are watching, that's still fucking beautiful capping, right? Now you're starting to enter some opinion. You are getting best available market number, but in the same way that I might bet 2 units on a 179.5, hope it gets to 183 and play it back for 1 unit, there's very, 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 very minimal value difference in doing the over for 1 unit and then the under for 2 units. Especially if that's the way that your brain is reading. And if your initial bet is because what Drew said earlier, I saw the difference in the market and I knew that this was going to move. So the reason that I bet it, because I saw the movement was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So then, take to side that you see the initial movement happening, wait for it, and then put your opinion hat on and put your hey, has this gone too far? Let's talk it out. Let's consider it. And then you open your middle position and decide how you're going to tilt it with exposure in real time. Drew, well done. That's beautifully,
thank you, sir.
Beautifully handled.
So I also want to say it's not been as quick as the over under in this, or the total line in this situation, but I did pick up the Fever -3.5 at -110 on Bet365 this morning for exactly the same reason. I've got a unit there And as that line climbs, and I think it will based on the performance and based on the hype we're seeing on Twitter, etc. Everybody watched that game last night. Dave Portnoy was tweeting about it all night. It was like, and to be honest, I'm sorry, it wasn't last night. It was 2 nights ago. However, great game. Loved watching every bit of it. And oh no, it was last night.
It was last night, but by the time people listen to this podcast, it might be
these days run together for me. I apologize, guys. I expect that line to climb to probably Indy -4.5, maybe Indy -5, and I will play back extra on the Wings at that number because I think the Wings are streaking in the right direction. They're coming off some good wins. They're playing with pace. They're being super efficient. And I think they're kind of the surprise team of the back half of the season.
Yeah. I mean, they're really surging right now. They just took the Lynx. They beat the Lynx up inside when I watched that game the other night,
that was nuts.
which was very impressive to do to a team that's tops in the league in defense and then shoots from 3 on offense. Like, they want to close the paint. They could not do that against the Dallas Wings. So yeah, that's another good angle. They'll be home. They're surging. There's this Fever team that has probably a ton of public sentiment. So yeah, you might be flipping your exposure in both directions.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I
also think the Dallas Wings home crowd is really good. I've noticed that, especially when they came back against, I think it was the Sparks about a week ago on that, like, they were down 23 in the fourth quarter. That crowd was fire in the fourth quarter. Got them every bit of the sixth man out there that they could.
You want to know the happiest thing that this makes me? I started off this game breakdown with saying Drew's Indiana Fever. And I tweeted last night.
Clark's Indiana Fever, first of all. Come on.
Okay, sure. But we know around these neck of the woods, around advantage circles, I've never met a bigger Fever fan. This guy's running 103 in his temperature right now. Get him some Dayquil.
You can see it in my face. I got the redness, right?
Exactly. It's not the lighting in his apartment. It's the fever that he's running.
Fever fire. I got a fever for the fever.
So I'm actually happy because I wanted to ask you. I've noticed how much you're becoming a Fever fan. And I was going to say, how is that going to impact your betting mindset? But you are been a professional poker player for close to 15 years.
Yep.
So you're numb to emotion taking away from edges, I think. And you're even willing to display that in the very first time that we talk since we've nominated you Queen of the Fever, that you're willing to play Dallas and you're even willing to flip your exposure and juice the Dallas side because you think it's the right play.
Well, the true basketball fan that I am, I'm near Toronto and I am Raptors fan through and through, been with them since literally the beginning. And I cannot tell you how much money I played playing them against the spread. No spread was high enough for them in the back sort of quarter half of the season when they were suffering from all those injuries. There were spreads that were like 16.5. And I'm like, no, they're losing by 30 tonight. I don't care. I bet that every single game and I made a ton of money on it.
Yeah, I remember one of the first episodes we did together was, you started coming on around late March, early April, right? When that tank mode of the Raptors was happening. And there was like a Nets -8.5 against the Raptors. And you were like, Nets -8.5. I'm like, Nets?
Yep. No. The Raptors weren't even
the Nets by 9, and I think the Nets ended up winning by 22 that game.
Yeah, it was the Raptors were not fielding an NBA squad at that point. It was just a bunch of like when Grady Dick is your number one starter, that's a problem. I love Grady Dick, for the record. I love Grady Dick.
I'm gonna edit that out and just remove Grady. Let's keep talking.
Did you see the jersey swap he did with Black? And then they held it
that
up.
Was one of the best things
ever.
One of the best things ever. Okay, let's talk about the Las Vegas Aces Phoenix Mercury game. The Aces, I don't really even know what to think of the Aces anymore. And the Mercury are a team that I like to back down the stretch because they're very veteran laden with Taurasi, Griner, Khalil Copper. They're a team that I like to back. But this line comes out at various places. I have the open at 3, but I also see 3.5s available right now, and I see 2.5s available. So when that happens in the resources that I use, I almost wonder, did the 3 come up, you know, 10 seconds first before a 3.5 and a 2.5 also came up? Like, are these all opening lines? Has there been any movement on the board? And then you look at the way that they're juiced and you're like, oh, well, if a 3 and a 2.5 are available, like, can you just pick off one and start to know which way the direction's moving and get good line and a good hook on it? The best 3.5 is plus 113, and the best 2.5 is minus 120. So if you're going to end up grabbing one of those, which is fine, totally fine to grab one of those and play into it. But if you are going to eventually set up a middle, you're not really, if you play minus 110s on both sides, you're setting up a 5% chance of that middle of happening. But if you're starting to pay, minus 120s on both sides, you're asking for 10%, which you don't have the edge in those middle numbers. If you're playing minus 120 on one side and minus 110 on another, you're paying 7.5% for that middle, and you don't have those edges. That is not valuable in terms of, the numbers might look good, but the VIG associated with it doesn't help you out. That's not a profitable strategy. So for those reasons, I had nothing to grab now. Aces are a team that I love backing, but they're struggling. The Phoenix Mercury are a team that I like backing during the back half of the season, but I don't know where this goes right now. Drew, talk to me about Aces Mercury, because I got nothing.
I got nothing either, to be honest with you. That line is pretty sharp. I think it'll be a close game, likely. I will say the Vegas looked a little better against the Dream last night. They did cover the spread by 0.5 point. I know it moved back to minus 10, but I think
what did they win by? Did they win by 11?
They won by 11.
Thank you. Can I speak to that real quick?
Sure.
I'm so fucking happy you just said that. I saw it at 9 with 40 seconds left, and I was watching the screen when minus 8.5 and plus 10.5 were available, and I was like, should I do this? Should I do this? And I was just like, no, I'm not. That is you're close to fair value middle you could possibly do. That is your blanket. That's your 5% if you're paying the right big prices and getting the right numbers. Like, that's pretty just net neutral. So I didn't even initiate it. And then when I saw it was about to land on 9 with 40 seconds left, I was like, are you kidding me? So I'm really glad to hear it landed at 11. I couldn't look anymore. I was doing one of these. Yeah. All right. So you are thinking Aces in the spot.
Yeah. If you're going to play anything, I'd play the Aces money line. I think that they match up fairly well against the Mercury. I think that the other thing that's happening with them is they're actually starting to round into form a little bit. They look a little better. I know the Dream haven't been good all season, really, but they have come on in the last few weeks. I've been impressed with them. I think they've covered the spread in a lot of games, including outright winning some games that they shouldn't have won, or at least that they weren't favored to win. The other thing is, I know the line is moving under. I think it opened at 170 on FanDuel, and it's already at 168. For whatever reason, I kind of feel like the over is probably the way to go, even though it's against the market. These two teams like to play with pace, and it's a 4 p.m. game Sunday. They've had a bit of rest. Certainly the Mercury have had a bit of rest. You could see some increased defense and whatnot, but I also think that we're just going to see a lot of efficiency.
Is 168 just the perfect number? And that
it is sharp. Like, this is a sharp 168 spot.
It's like, hey, this is where it should be, and we might still have more room to go. It's more of a correction, right? If it's
that's exactly
when you see those things, it's you have to wonder, is this a correction or is this line movement, right? And if something moves from let's use this, it might be 170 directly to 168 just in one fell swoop.
I think that's what happened,
right?
Because so that's I only remember seeing 170 available, and now it's suddenly 168.
Right. And there's no 169s available in the market. There's no 169.5 that I ever saw anyway. So if that's a correction, let's speak to that for a quick second. then if you have the ability to grab a 170 when you see a correction happen, that's one of the strongest plays you could possibly get, because you know that number's never going back to 170, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are good. However,
Yep.
when you see line movement slowly happening, that is something that you can play into when it's still at the 168 in some cases, right? If it went 168 to 170 to 169 to 168 and a half to 168, you might say, okay, is this snowball going to keep rolling? Is this going to 166 and a half? Is this going to go to 165 and a half eventually? Because this is just line movement that keeps rolling and we're looking for the resistance point. We want other people to come back in. Those two things are different. So you have to try and evaluate it in real time. You have to try and know what happened with the movement, which is why using things like Spank odds and an odds screen are so valuable, because you get that information and you start to say, like, I've always used the term, these are indicators. These things are market indicators, because you'll never know. Like, I don't work for FanDuel. The only way that I would know why they moved the line from 170 to 168 is if I was a WNBA trader for FanDuel and I had access to the information and talk to the guy. Why'd you do it? Maybe it's an action. Maybe it's a reaction to news. Maybe it whatever. I don't know. But we could use these indicators to start to form a story and start to piece together patterns. Something I pride myself on is pattern recognition. So if I'm starting to stack these things together, that when this happens, this follows. So what's going to follow when we start to see this indicator, and then we have our own reaction? So this seems to be like a market correction, in which case, if you could grab a 170, I would Thor it with a hammer and whack it. But at 168, I don't know if I would still play into it.
So I have a question for you. Are we still considering FanDuel to be sort of the sharpest of the books
No,
currently?
so it's let me answer and slightly rephrase your question.
Okay.
One, you're asking specifically to WNBA,
Yes.
because in general, they are not a quote unquote sharp book, and FanDuel, of all the public books, does spend the most money on their algorithms and their trading and those pricing, whatever, prediction models and all those things. So when FanDuel releases an opening line versus when other recreational books open a opening line, I generally tend to trust FanDuel's more, and I'm generally thinking the movement will likely be in the direction of where they have their number, and that's what I think you're speaking to. I think there's much sharper books that are like Pinnacle in your neck of the woods, Drew.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of times that I wait for some of those sharper books to release lines. FanDuel's the sharpest book that releases lines early. Is that
Okay.
the right way to put it?
Yeah,
Because they're
that's
in the
kind of
recreational space, and those sharper books that take much bigger monies might not release the games until the next day. Like, we might not have Sunday slate until Sunday morning or late tonight. So you're not like, I'll check if Pinnacle has odds up for the WNBA right now. But I think it's the resource to use when the odds aren't available everywhere.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. One of the things I'll say is FanDuel brought that line out at 170, and I'm seeing all of the other books kind of come out at 168, sort of 15 minutes later. I even see a 167 and a half, which I'm trying to confirm currently.
So wouldn't that
on-
fly in the face of the other ones? If the other ones release it at 168 and then FanDuel corrects, that would mean that they were the one that was wrong in this particular. So that's why you can't always just say play towards that.
Well, what I'm wondering is, if we think FanDuel is better at handicapping than a 888, than Sports Interaction, some of those smaller books,
Yep.
are they only moving that number because the smaller books brought out the other numbers and they feel like they'll get taken advantage of based on the fact that everyone else has a smaller number available to
Right.
them?
They're just simply off market.
Yeah.
And they need to correct to the market. Yeah. And then you have to ask yourself, were
Was
they
FanDuel
off on this
sharper
one
initially?
game, or are they still more right and every other book was more wrong? We don't even know. Like if you're pulling them from Bet 365 and 888 and some of the smaller casinos and sports books, you might not know. Like some of those just mimic bigger books lines. Like
Yeah.
I think there's one sports book that's pretty big in terms of a casino, like very big. I'm not going to use the name on this. This is an edge I don't want to give away, to be totally honest.
Makes sense.
There's one book for the NBA, which is my favorite market to attack, that I feel simply mimics, and they're an industry leader in other markets. And in the NBA, they wait until one or two other books have their lines, and then they match them.
Yeah.
So I know when XYZ starts to move, ABC is going to catch up because they're a mimicker. So because of that, a lot of my NBA action is just waiting for the market and then waiting for that one book to not have moved yet and to catch up. So I think you have to know. I think it's a great question. I think we kind of talked about it without giving a direct answer. I think people can learn some of the things that we said about these particular sports books. But I think in overall, if you are betting and you are attacking multiple books and you are attacking a particular market, like write this shit down. Like start keeping mental notes of it. Start remembering, hey, these two books opened, it moved. Hey, it's moving 80% of the time towards the FanDuel number. And so that would mean this, or it's moving on these particular teams. This book always has this team right. Like they're nailing it right now. And they might be in the local market of the best beat writer who's popping out that information. You have to start to know who's the sharpest book for the best market that you want to attack. And once you do that, it does unlock the ability to just do some basic top-down stuff that becomes easier. That
makes a lot of sense.
So we just talked about that and we've no place.
Sorry, say that again.
So we just talked about that whole game. We've no place.
I
think it was a great conversation.
Great conversation. I don't have any position yet.
Okay. So to wrap us up, I think we are going.
Available is the Atlanta LA, and the line isn't out yet. But I would personally, when the line comes out, I obviously want to see how high the line is. But I would be backing Atlanta most of the time, unless it's egregiously high.
Okay, I've bet absolutely nothing on this slate, so I just want to say this under is the main direction that I'm looking in. The Sky Lynx situation. We do have to wait on the Kennedy Carter news. I think if the Carter situation is active and the line increases, that would be another correction to play against and then take the under because it'll correct and then there will start to be action towards it. So I don't think there's any movement on it yet. It's only been up for 2 hours now. So, and we're waiting on news. So I think this is one of the more volatile lines I am trying to attack on this slate. Drew grabbed the Indiana Fever -3.5 and the over on the 179.5 here, but he said to both of them that he might flip his exposure. So Drew, I'll ask you, if you saw these lines available right now, you're probably betting nothing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think they're kind of in the spot that they're going to be. I could see some public money and even some private money coming in on the or some big money bets, sharp bets coming in on the Indiana Fever going forward, just because of how well they've been playing, right? And
they're playing great.
Yeah, they've really shown out. That team. I was watching some of the press conference after the game. They were all talking about chemistry, how close they've gotten, how much they've spent time together with one another. And it shows on the court. You see them huddle up every single stoppage. And it's nice to see Caitlin Clark. It looks like she's actually already the leader of this team. She seems to be the most vocal one on the court. She seems to be pointing out things and doing all of that kind of stuff. I'm really, really impressed with how she's played in the second half of the season. It's been incredible to watch, and I cannot wait for her to improve even more.
Then the last game that I agree with everything you said, Fever related, Drew. The last game that we didn't bet was Aces Mercury. And then, of course, not on the FanDuel site is still Storm versus Sun, which is the second back-to-back leg of the Connecticut Sun. So if you're watching tonight's Sun versus Mystics game, then you might know how to attack. I say tonight's, it starts in
It tips off in
minutes.
15, yeah.
So if you're watching that game in 15 minutes, you will know how to potentially move in the following game because the Sun have that 22-hour back-to-back. Drew, anything else that we want to add, or did we just eat pretty well?
I think we ate pretty well. The only thing I want to give a shout out, you were on the Buckets podcast this week. Maria was fire. Her picks were great. I agreed with everything you guys said on that podcast, literally everything. And Caitlin Clark for the over under on points, rebounds, assists is again at 34.5, and she destroyed that. That was smoked by the end of the third quarter in the last game. So I picked up a half unit on that personally.
And I also think this is the game, like, what was the total for that game against the Sky yesterday? It was 163.5.
Yeah, something like that.
We're getting the same prop line with 19. We're getting the same prop line that she just smashed, that she's now hit an 8 of 11 for the trends bettors.
Yeah.
That is now in a game that's 19 points higher in the total.
Yeah.
Make it make sense.
It doesn't.
Explain it to me like I'm
grabbing it. Like, is anytime for all those people listening, you see something that doesn't make sense based on other numbers, you should probably look into betting that, because things correlate.
Can I follow up on that?
Absolutely.
Reach out to me.
Like, yeah.
DM me on Twitter if you see something that's off. We can evaluate it together.
Right? I would love to do the same thing.
Reach out to Drew.
Deal.
Follow Drew.
Yeah.
DM him. He's a professional poker player. Like, the dude.
I am literally sitting at my computer like 12 hours a day.
Drew, when's the last time you had a normal boss?
5-ish years now.
And
I wasn't full-time poker until about 4 years ago. It was like my part-time income.
So this, like, again, that's still 5 years ago, dude. Like, that's still what? Like, during COVID, you were making the transition to be.
That's exactly what happened. Yes.
Okay. Wow. First of all, COVID 5 years ago is pretty crazy. And,
I know, right?
And yeah, like, DM us and reach out to us, because this just happened where I got a DM from Alex. Shout out Alex. Saying, hey, that Russell Wilson bet that you were talking about a lot, like, I found it on DraftKings again, and it's minus 425. And I said, what?
Yeah.
I said, I bet that at minus 750 very hard. And then I thought they pulled the lines, but they were available in Canada for a little bit. And then he's like, yeah, I'm in Canada. And then he explained to me where he found it. And ultimately, I found it in the U.S. Sportsbook. I found it was just in a weird tab, and I searched it, and I ended up finding it. It was not where it was before they moved the bet, and I still found it. And he's like, "Hey, do you still think this is a great bet?" And
it's an even better bet.
Simply because it was a rare moment where the line moved against me, but I was actually super confident that it was a better bet. I'm gonna do some reflection and writing on why I knew that in the coming days, because I think it's interesting. But like, the reason, like, Alex reaching out to me was the reason why Alex was able to cash. He says he bet 4 figures on it. So he was able to cash the biggest bet of his life. I started getting down some serious action on it. Drew, I texted you to get some action on it.
I put some on it.
I texted Jamie, who came on the NBA podcast, to bet his penis on it. And I started telling a lot of people on Twitter to bet it too. And then because Alex reached out to me, like 7 other people ended up responding.
Thank you, Alex.
Hey, dude, biggest hit of my life. So the reason why I follow people back, the reason why, like, my DMs are open, is because we are a team. Like, if you're listening to the Advantage Sports Betting Podcast, you're probably starting to get pretty sharp, or wanting to learn how to get pretty sharp, or like, you're just not a public schmuck. Like, we're in this together, fellas. It's us versus the books. Like, Drew's picking off fish at his poker tournament. You're not the fish if you're listening right now.
No.
Like, we're the tuna. We're the salmon. We're the king of the underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we need to do is work together to now pick off. So another thing I did recently in my newsletter is sent out beat writers for all 32 teams in the NFL. If you see something, say something. It's not just when you're at an airport. It is even in the gambling market. Drew, anything else before we get out of here?
No, just cheers to the long weekend, guys. I've been enjoying a pint. I hope you guys have been too. And enjoy the games. Enjoy the football season coming up. And we'll have more content for you as soon as we possibly have more lines.
We do have some parting words from Patrick Beverley. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, peace out.
Y'all subscribe to my podcast while y'all asking all these questions. Don't forget to subscribe to the pod. And if you're a kid, listen to your parents. Listen to your parents.
Listen to your parents.
Subscribe to the pod.
Subscribe.
Subscribe to the pod. Subscribe to the pod. Subscribe to the pod, man.